So the other day I was introduced to a woman as a meditation teacher, and she was like, "Oh, that's so cool that you can like control your mind and all of that." And I thought, hey, this is actually a really good video topic because this is a very common misconception that meditation is about controlling your mind. And it kind of is, but it's very much the wrong way to look at it because of all the connotations that we have around control. So the thing is, our mind is actually very reactive, as I'm sure you know, and trying to control our mind will actually make it more reactive and more restless. It's quite exhausting to try to control your mind, and then you get tired, and then your mind is just dull and tired and not very good at anything. So meditation and mindfulness is really not about trying to control your mind. It's more so about learning to relax your mind. Learning to relax the mind is really about not feeding thoughts, not putting more energy into them, and actually about letting go. So it's about noticing thought patterns as they arise and then just not feeding them, not rejecting them, not pushing them away. So often when people are trying to, let's say, let go of some emotion they're holding on to, what they're actually doing is rejecting it. They're pushing it away. You're actually tightening up around it. But when you tighten up around something that's internal, it just holds more tightly. It just makes it more stuck. So what we're actually doing is just letting things be as they are. The attitude is that it's totally okay to be having this experience. No matter what your mind is thinking about, that's okay. But at the same time, we're not feeding it with more energy. We're not attaching importance to it. We're just casually watching, that's okay. It's really about this equanimity, about just letting things be as they are. And when you practice this over and over, just noticing and accepting whatever's coming up in your mind, in your body, thoughts and feelings, just casually watching, accepting things as they are, that's when they begin to soften naturally. You can't force them to soften. That doesn't work so well. When you try to reject, push away, stop thoughts or feelings, it just creates more inner conflict, more resistance. So meditation and mindfulness is really this slow softening of patterns, and they slowly soften through watching them with this attitude, this stance of equanimity. I have a lot more practices and videos on equanimity. I'll link to a playlist below, but we can get a taste for this right now. So right now, just notice what's happening in your experience. Notice if there's any thoughts coming up. Notice if there's been any thoughts coming up, repetitively. And just take this attitude of that's okay. It's okay that it's doing that. And notice if there's some part that wants to jump in, that wants to make the thoughts do something. And that part is okay too. So it's noticing the patterns, noticing our own inner reactivity, noticing whatever's coming up. And just accepting that too. Noticing if we're having trouble accepting things, and that's okay too. And the more we could just be okay with whatever's happening, even our own reactivity or our own judgments or our own inability to make any of this work, if you can just be okay with that, things will slowly soften. It softens through awareness and acceptance. The Shinzen Young terms that I often use are clarity and equanimity. So being really clear on what's happening, and this is a process because it often takes a little while for us to develop clarity around our experience. So noticing the thought patterns, noticing how our thoughts are occurring, noticing the feelings that they're bringing up, just being more clear with what our experience is internally, and then just bringing that equanimity, that attitude of this is okay. That's really the core thing that we're practicing in meditation. This is the way of being that is going to be most transformative. It's going to be a lot more transformative to your everyday experience than focusing on concentration, for example. Concentration is an excellent skill to have, but with the clarity and equanimity, your concentration is naturally going to get better without directly focusing on the concentration. It's the lack of equanimity and the lack of clarity that make our concentration so bad. So that's the mindset, that's the approach, that's most of what I teach on this channel, although I teach a lot of other things as well. But this is really the core thing that I'm trying to communicate in so many different ways through so many different practices and perspectives. Now, that being said, what if we take this approach and the same repetitive thoughts and feelings keep coming up? What if they're so rigidly ingrained in our system that even this approach does not seem to soften them? or only minimally softens them? Well, that's going to be the next video where I'm going to explore how we can soften these parts. I'm going to draw a lot from IFS, internal family systems, and we're going to look at what patterns are arising and how we can better bring those patterns into awareness, understanding, and really actively help them to soften through a compassionate presence with them. I've tried a lot of things personally and with clients to soften these like ingrained neurotic ways of being. And this is by far the most direct and sensical and effective approach that I've come across. It works really great for like inner critic stuff, for any parts of us that don't seem helpful, that keep coming up no matter what we do. We often try to reject them, and rejecting them, pushing them away, denying them is actually counterproductive. It's usually not very helpful. So stay tuned for the next video where we'll go more in depth into that approach. And of course, subscribe, like the video, sign up for my newsletter, and I have a Patreon if you want to support this. All the support is always very much appreciated, and I will see you next time.